Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the December garden checklist video. I do one of these each month, just going over the things we're doing in our garden here in Raleigh, North Carolina, Zone 7B. If you've followed along, this landscape has evolved a lot over the last 30 months or so here in Raleigh, and we still have lots to do here. We still have lots of plans. It's a very small urban lot, so we're running out of space, but we have plans to move some things around, rearrange some things. You learn things every year, and you can add to and take away as we go. So please follow along with that. One thing here in December in the South is we can continue to plant, and it's actually a pretty good planting month if you're planting hardy things. And so we don't want to be planting super marginal things in December, or things that you go to the store and you look at and there's a lot of new growth on them. Those are probably things I'm going to avoid putting in the ground. But everything else, if it's asleep and it's been outside at the garden center you're going to, buy it, dig a hole, put it in the ground. It's actually better off in the ground than it is in the container above the ground. One thing that's exciting here, especially here in the South, is we have the opportunity to kind of year-round garden. And so we can think about, as I stand here 2 days from December, I've got a viburnum nudum back here with great fall color on it that will be a great plant for birds in the future. The berries on many viburnum are great for birds. I've got a American beautyberry, a white berrying American beautyberry out by the street that the birds have found in the last couple of weeks, and they're going to town on it. So we like to put plants in the ground that are good for the birds in the winter. Of course, then we have a bird feeder here as well. Other things we're looking for this time of year are, things with great fall color. And you can, as you're going around your area, you can see the things that are really showing off in November and December here. This Tamukiyama Japanese maple would certainly be one of those. We've got a variegated abelia in front of it, and the two contrast really great together. This abelia stays evergreen, so it's going to have this gold color here in the garden in the winter time. Also, out looking for specials right now, because everybody's garden centers, box stores, people are converting to Christmas or have long converted to Christmas in most cases now. There are some bargains to be had. One of those bargains, I came across this tray of hardy asters the other day. There's still some purple flowers on them. You see that right up here till December. These were heavily discounted down to $2 a piece, and they'll come right back next year and look great. And this is a fall blooming perennial. So we will pop these in the ground here and there. I may even give a couple of them away, but I went ahead and bought a whole tray since they were on clearance. And it's something that will bloom in the fall. So we have so many spring flowering things out here and summer flowering things out here. It's nice to add where we can, add more things for the fall. So our soil's quite a bit improved out here over the last year or two. I can dig that now with one hand after using compost and wood chips on it for this long. And we'll pop that aster in there, and quick and easy, just like that. Couple weeks it'll go dormant, and then we'll get enough cold on it to knock it back to the ground. It'll come back in the spring. I've got other summer spring flowering perennials around it. It will come back just look like a little green shrub all summer long, and then it'll pop up and bloom in probably late August, September, October, November, and even still has a flower on it right up until December. So 2 days before December, this Marvel Mahonia is showing off on the warmer days. The bees are on this one. In fact, one overnighted on here. I should charge it rent. Farfugium, the tractor seat plant, looking amazing. Flowers are just starting to open on it. I've got a 25-degree night coming this week. I might actually throw a cover over this one. I don't usually protect plants a whole lot, but when one's about to open some flowers, I might actually do that. The gold Elysium that's back here behind me, really shows off this time of year. The rest of the year, you can see it, but the other things around it are flowering. And then of course we have lots of camellias out here that are in partial or full flower at this point. This is a Camellia japonica that blooms super early called Early Wonder. Perfect name for it, and absolutely perfect, really formal doubles. Let me pop one of these off and show it to you up close. Look how amazing Look how amazing that is. Just an absolutely perfect flower. That's just a few examples of things that can kind of extend the season here in the South. There's just a lot of things we can use. Some deciduous hollies that still have their berries on them at this point. I was driving down the interstate yesterday and there's a big group of those. There's a lot of ways to invite birds in. There's a lot of ways to get extended fall color, and a lot of ways to continue to have flowering plants. Until it gets really, really cold, and then they'll take a break and then start blooming again. The other thing is, Steph and I put up a video this week just showing some container refresh video, and things like this variegated boxwood, which are a couple zones hardier than our area here in 7B. This thing will look great all winter long in that container. It was underplanted with some violas. Violas tend to be a little more cold hardy than pansies, so we tend to use more violas in the containers and pansies in the ground. But pansies are available for us. The snapdragons down below, which don't have any color on them yet, but they're getting themselves rooted in, and they'll bloom like crazy by late winter. Things like dianthus will bloom right through the winter here. Again, on extremely cold periods, it will stop, but then they'll just start right back up. They're just getting themselves established. But lots of container interest things, and we have, definitely can use conifers in our containers for the winter. One other thing to be on the lookout for is discount bulbs. So with everything being converted to Christmas at most of the garden centers, they may have discounted the bulbs, the spring flowering bulbs at this point. We actually got all of our bulbs from Color Blends, and they always do such a good job with them. That's why I get them, not paid to say that in any way, but we are in the process of this year just putting in bulbs that will naturalize, will come back every year without us having to think about it. In the past, I've shown lots of tulips and hyacinths and some other things that needed cold treating, and then I had to rebuy them every year. So just not doing that in this garden this year, but if you're buying tulips and you're in the South, you may want to refrigerate them for a few weeks. They do need some cold treatment, and putting them in the ground may not offer them that cold treatment. Even in the winter here in the South may not be enough. So just look up the bulb. You can go back to my bulb videos from a couple years ago, and you can see how to treat any of those as well. But again, naturalizing bulbs like daffodils, we're popping them in the ground right now. One thing I always say is they will face south when they open up for the most part, and to the south and east is where the flowers will be. So this side of our garden is where that was where we want to plant them, so that we're looking at them this way. I can plant them here and look at them from the grass over in that area, and so we're thinking that part through, is those bulbs will face toward the sun. So whichever side that is in the winter sun. I just use my little digger here and my Pro Plugger. These are good size daffodil bulbs. Pop that in the ground about 3 times the depth, and then flip this over, knock that soil back out on top of them, and I had some soil in there from another planting thing. That's kind of funny that I hadn't gotten out of there. But I'll plant. What we do with daffodils is we never put them in big giant groupings really, because they do fade in the wintertime, or after they bloom, the foliage doesn't look all that great, and so what we end up doing is putting them in areas where something will come up around them pretty quickly, so that it takes away from the fact that they're declining, because you do need to leave the foliage and let it die back to the ground. And so we're tucking them into places where they just kind of disappear into the background while they get the energy they need to reset for the next year. Here's an example of the dianthus that I was talking about. There are a few flowers on them, but they're just getting themselves established, same as the snapdragons, same as the pansies, same as the violas. Getting them in the ground, getting them established, so that when we come out of the back of the worst of the winter in January, they'll be ready to just explode, and we'll get several months of them in peak flower. One thing I'd like to point out on the bulbs is there's a tag in the ground right there that says Pink Charm. That's a daffodil that was planted out here in the front garden. That video will go up here in the next couple of days, showing bulb planting here in this garden in Raleigh. Here's another group that was planted. So we have tags in the ground for the individual bulbs, and then we also map them as well, just because bulbs are especially can be a bigger issue than other things, because they, like I say, they do come up in the spring, flower, and then go dormant, and then they're under there, and it's pretty easy to stick a shovel in the ground and either damage them or pop them, just pop them out of the ground and go, oh, I have bulbs planted here. So we do keep them marked in the ground and mapped. Our fall vegetable garden is kind of peak right now. We had the mother load of collards for Thanksgiving, having salads several times a week. You can see how many greens are actually out here. I've got broccoli that's almost ready to pick, but I got a 25-degree night coming in a couple nights. We've got a cover. We got several covers actually that we've been covering this with on the nights that are below 30 degrees. 32, 31 doesn't seem to hurt this stuff all that at all, but anything a little colder than that, I'm covering. And we've only had a couple nights so far in the 20s, and so this keeps producing. Peas coming off right now. We've got carrots that are ready, kohlrabi, lots of kale. Again, the broccoli's almost ready. Several different lettuces that we can pick from. We've got a netting around it to keep the rabbits out of it, because the rabbits would definitely enjoy this buffet right here, especially the Swiss chard that's in here, because they really love that. And again, there's peas on both ends of this, and that we've done a poor job of picking so far. We need to get out here and pick some of them, because there's a lot of them that are ready. Steph's actually standing on a pile of wood chips back there that we have reserved to cover this space once these cool season veggies come out. And so we will get down to a temperature in the next few weeks that will kill this back. And so we'll harvest what we can harvest, dig up the rest, put it on the compost pile, and then we'll put wood chips down across this entire bed. We have wood chips in the aisles right now, but we'll put the wood chips across this entire bed, and then that next few months, that stuff will break down. It'll keep the garden alive. It will continue to improve the garden. And then when we come back in here with either some more cool season vegetables in the 1st of March, or wait until mid-April for our summer vegetables, again, the soil will have improved some more. The material that we haven't eaten in here will become compost that we'll use in the future. So, just keep cycling through, keep adding organic material. That's what we do. But I think we're going to get maybe 2-3 more weeks out of this. I think we'll finish off some broccoli. If you follow me on Instagram, you can see some of the vegetables coming out of here. So follow along there. I've shown vegetable garden and I've shown containers. Those might be two things that I would add some organic fertilizer to if I was trying to get something to grow, like the pansies, violas, dianthus, snapdragons, cool season vegetables. I might fertilize those things. I'm not fertilizing them because I'll fertilize my containers coming out of winter. They really don't need it right now. I'm not going to be able to get that much more out of them, so I just don't bother. But they could be. The same thing with the cool season vegetables. But again, between adding compost and adding wood chips to that space, we just don't find that we need a whole lot of fertilizer. That was not fertilized. What you just saw over there was not fertilized. I probably put those vegetables in and said, I'm going to fertilize. I never fertilized. And you can see what that looks like. And it's been done really through soil improvement. The soil has everything those plants need, and they're very nutrient dense because they're getting their nutrition directly from rock dust, actual dirt, or actual soil. And so again, we fertilize far less than anybody else would recommend. But again, if you wanted to push something like pansies or something like that, you could now. I'll fertilize them all toward the end of February, and then they'll just explode in March. I find that's adequate. Leaves. This is the time of year for maintenance with leaves. We have this giant oak above us. You can see a magnolia first, and then you see this big giant white oak that's above us, and it's in peak color. We've got peak color here, right? The last week of November has been our peak color here in Raleigh, which is probably a little later than usual, but everything's looking great right now. There's a willow oak I can see back behind the camera, and Japanese maple. Dogwoods have long lost their leaves, but good color out here. But that oak kind of dominates this landscape. It dominates back here where everything stays a little dry. This is a dry shade space. And then of course right now you can see leaves raining on me. So we have a path back here that I just put wood chips down on. If you're following along with the channel, I did show that off. I'll come through here and get the leaves off of this, but we don't do anything else with the leaves. We're not taking the leaves, you know, we're not putting them out for the city to pick up. We're leaving them in place as mulch, doing what nature's trying to tell us, which is get the ground covered. If they pile up too deep right under this tree, we will transfer some of them to some areas that don't have leaves in them. So we will fan them out, but not remove them. Okay, you can, if they get too thick, we might cut some of them up and use them, you know, as a finer material. If you have a lot of wind, you might want to run some of them up, because that will, different size material will help lock down on itself and not blow out of the bed as badly. Won't stop it, but hopefully not as badly. But we try to leave the leaves in place, because the back of these leaves, if you notice, if you pick up enough of them, you'll see that they're, you know, that oak is, I think there's something like 500 species of insects that use that oak as a home base. And so these leaves dropping down on the ground, some of them have, you know, those wasp and things on the back of them. The birds will take advantage of that out here during the winter. The robins will be flipping every leaf over back here looking for these creatures, but some of them will survive and they'll be part of our pollinator garden next year. But just keep that in mind, that you know, the trees aren't wrong. They're trying to tell us, you know, keep the ground covered. And so I'll rake it out of the places I don't want it, and then we'll gently, I'll take my rake, in order to not bend over. I'll just take a garden, you know, a leaf rake like this, and I'll go through this mahonia and gently pull out. I'm not so uptight about this that I need to get every leaf out of it, but I will get some portion of the leaves off of the things. Just get them down to the ground where they're trying to fall anyway. This Mojo pittosporum, you'll find some things you can really rake pretty hard, or pretty vigorously without hurting. But you know, that's how I go through. I'll come through here once a week and I'll rake off this path, and I'll just rake these leaves into some spot that is open. It doesn't have a visible plant in it. There's probably something there, it's just asleep. I'll rake off ground covers like this ajuga, just like that, and then this other pittosporum back here, and this area looks, you know, looks much better. And this is just how it's going to look through the winter. I actually like the look of a garden that's supposed to be asleep at a time of year. You know, it's supposed to look like this. This is. I mean, if it's a little messy to some folks, this is what it's supposed to look like. And then I've got these leaves now, keeping the ground warm, right? Because I mean, this is an insulation blanket, keeping it moist. They're going to break down in the future and become food for the plants next year. All right. If you have an excessive amount of leaves and you do want to break them up, you can get something to grind them up, like a little grind. I've got one of those tools I bought from Amazon. I showed it on the channel a while back, where you can put leaves in a little drum and it kind of whips them and breaks them apart. It's not a great tool. It's probably easier just to take leaves out on the driveway and run the lawnmower over them. If you do have an excessive amount and you need to reduce there, because you can reduce a pile of leaves this big down to just a few handfuls by grinding them up. But I do encourage you to keep some of them whole if you can. One other thing is, you know, we've got them dropping in these pansies too, and I find that I can just gently take this leaf rake. If I'm just gentle about it, I can go through here and clean this pansy bed down to my mulch. If I leave I've always found if I leave the leaves on the pansies like this, number one, this mulch that I used is black, and so it's going to warm up faster, exposing that black mulch. Okay, and the faster I can get the roots warmed up, the more root growth I can get on them, the more they're going to grow in the spring. So that's one reason. The other reason is I find that if leaves are in these annual beds in the wintertime, they stay too wet, and these pansies like to be pretty well drained. They don't like to sit in water. Don't like to be bone dry either, but they certainly don't like to sit in water. So I will gently go through here. I did no harm whatsoever to them by taking a rake over the top of them, but also gives me some differentiation in color between the leaves, the black mulch, the grass edge, you know, that kind of thing, which is, you know, always looks good. Those color contrast in the garden always look great. So one other thing about removing leaves is definitely off your turf. You know, any grass that you have, that's the one thing that I rake almost pretty much every day back here right now, is that area. One other thing that's happening right now is, well, two things. Number one, your plants are going to sleep, and all of a sudden they expose weeds that you hadn't seen all season long. Somehow the ligustrum had grown up in the middle of your perennial, and you didn't notice it all year because it was covered up. So this time of year is a good time to go around and scout for some of those invasive weeds. We've got here's some ivy right here, hidden in an agapanthus. We've got ivy on that oak tree. That's another thing. I got to go back in there and cut that ivy down at the base of the back of that tree. It's not on our property, but it is hanging over us, and those seeds are definitely dropping down into this garden. So I'm looking for those invasive plants, the ligustrums, and again, ivy, anything that's trying to spring back up in here that I didn't notice because the garden was so full. The other thing is your winter weeds are germinating right now. That's chickweed and henbit. Those two will just absolutely take off in February or March. If you've had your garden overrun with those little purple flowering henbit in the spring or the white flowering chickweed, that's what that is. That seed is everywhere. Those things are so good at producing seed, both of them are, that the seed is definitely in your garden, and it will come up somewhere. You're going to have those problems, so you need to stay on top of those. The one way we're going about combating a lot of those is, again, by keeping the ground covered. And so the leaves are going to help prevent that, okay? The bark and compost that we use for the pansies out there, that's going to help that. After all the leaves have dropped off, we're actually going to mulch, remulch the garden. That's going to help with that. So if I have fresh mulch down here, fresh leaves down here, all of those things are helping. Again, I am going through here right now, though, and making sure I'm starting with a clean slate. I don't want to throw mulch out here, you know, and start this big project without having it clean to start with. Then the other thing about having fresh mulch down going into spring is after the chickweed and henbit, the winter weeds, and there's a couple others as well. After those winter weeds are done, of course, that is right about the time the soil temperature comes back up to about 65 degrees, and that's when your crabgrass and Johnson grass and all of your summer weeds are going to be germinating. So by letting these leaves drop down and then putting a mulch cap on top of it, I'm hoping I can prevent the majority of the weeds from germinating next year and not have to do a whole lot of hand pulling or whatever weed control that I would need to do otherwise. So keep the ground covered. This is the time of year to make decisions on any of your tropical bulbs, whether or not you need to be digging them up. So you need to check in your area, your zone, whether or not some of these things need to come out of the ground. Steph started there on elephant ear. We leave those in the ground here. I don't have any problem, but a little north of here, they probably need to be dug up. Here's a calla lily that will stay in the ground through the winter for us as well. Again, it's, you know, can be marginal for us depending on the winter. Once they're really, really established, I don't have to worry about it. And then she's focusing over here on some dahlias. We're also in the area where dahlias are marginal, whether they're going to come back or not. So we're in zone 7. Zone 8, 9, and 10, dahlias pretty reliably come back year to year. Here in zone 7, it's hit or miss, but I find if they do come back one year, they will come back every year. So I'm willing to take the risk because the ones that I can get to come back are then pretty much, the tuber gets big enough that they're perennials. But it is the time of year, if you've got those kind of tropical bulbs, to dig them up and store them. There's lots of videos on YouTube about storing those kinds of, you know, dahlias and elephant ears and calla lilies and what am I missing, Steph? Caladiums is another one that might need to come out of the ground in your area. So let's talk about the big maintenance things that always get asked every month. I've already covered mulch, so we will get this mulch sometime in the next couple of months over the winter, because again, I'm trying to prevent those summer weeds. I'm trying to make sure I have just a kind of a perfect cap in place before that soil starts to heat up in the late winter, and I can prevent a lot of those weeds. Hopefully the leaves are going to help me with my henbit and chickweed and that kind of thing. In the meantime, the So there's your mulching thing. The other thing would be pruning. I get lots of pruning questions. There's some tree pruning that can definitely happen during the peak of the winter. I don't do a lot of pruning in the winter time unless it's just some sort of crazy limb. I leave all the perennials up because again, it's another host thing for a lot of important pollinators. A lot of creatures use these native perennials, especially during the winter time. So we don't prune those back. I will take out my annuals that have died back to the ground completely, and put those on the compost pile. But the perennials we just leave them up, and so we're doing very little maintenance, really. I mean, let the leaves drop where they want to, clean them off of places that I don't want them, mulch later in the winter. We don't really water anything in the ground because we're in an area that gets kind of regular rainfall. And once we finally have gotten some rain, you can probably see that on the ground this morning that it's moist out here. Our containers, we may water once or twice during the winter. If you're using inorganic fertilizers, I've said this many times, inorganic fertilizers are like non-organic fertilizers. That would be little prills in the pots, you'll see when you buy your plants. Those, if there is inorganic fertilizer in your containers, you want to flush your containers a couple times during the winter. Those salts will build up in there, so it's good. We used to take the covers off at our nursery and just flush the pots completely out during the winter just to wash some of that out, because it will continue to release fertilizer and again build up salts. The plant's really not using the fertilizer, so it's not of any value to them. And then again, I'll wait until February, March to do most of my pruning. You got to be careful on your pruning period because some of these things are early spring flowering things and the buds are already on them. So if you are going to do any winter pruning, make sure you know that you're not cutting flowers off that particular item. It's pretty easy to find, information that, on, whether something is blooms on old wood or new wood at this point if you do need to do some winter pruning. I talked about covering the vegetable garden on really cold nights to extend that season. You might have a few shrubs in your landscape that are marginal, and if you've planted them in mid to late summer or going into fall and they're barely hardy in your area, this spider's web fatsia would be an example of that for us. This one's been in the ground long enough that I'm not going to worry about any winter protection. But 2 winters ago, it was planted late in the season, and it did take a lot of damage in the winter. This would be something I would consider throwing a sheet over if it was newly planted that year and you knew it was marginal. Those are going to be things to keep an eye on, especially if the temperature falls really, really quickly. So you're getting like nights in around 30, and you're getting nights around 30, and then the next thing you know, it's going to be 18. That's a night that you want to take some sheets out and cover a few of the marginal plants in your landscape. December's the month I actually pull the lawnmower out and get the oil changed, get the blade sharpened on it, make sure that it's kind of ready to go back to work in the spring. That's true with any tools. We usually have tools laying all over the place. It's a good month, December and January, to kind of reorganize them. They won't stay organized for long, but we'll get them organized. I would disconnect all my hose bibs as it's getting colder this time of year. I don't want to crack one of those. Of course, December is the gift giving month, and if you've got a gardener in your life, then gardening gifts are great for that. I do have Amazon links down below the video for a lot of the tools that I use in the videos. I also offer consultations for those of you who don't know that, and there's gift cards for the consultation. So if you want to give someone a 50-minute consultation with me to go over plans for their landscapes, that is available down below the videos and over on my website at HortTube.com. And there's an upcoming series called Learn to Garden that I am giving away a $50 launch discount on. So that's linked down below as well. There's a code that you can use to get $50 off of that if you'd like to give that perhaps as a gift as well. So that's enough of Jim selling Jim. The last thing we'll talk about here is planning. Winter is the perfect month for planning, and Steph and I are looking at this space, which looks, I'm standing in probably what looks like the worst space in the garden right now, and the reason for that is because we've been growing our dahlias on this side of the vegetable garden. And so they're this tall, and the vegetables are back here, and our vegetable garden actually looks pretty good most of the time. And so this has been blocking it, and it looks good for some period of time, but then it spends a lot of the year not looking so great. So, we just had this little moment where you go, oh, what if the dahlias were just simply on the other side? of the vegetable garden back there, and then we can re-landscape this. And so you guys will see when this gets done, these dahlias will be transplanted, and we'll show you all the process of this. But sometimes, you know, you have something in your garden, you have a great plan, you put it into motion, and then you go, oh, that's just not quite right. It's okay to dig something up and move it. So we're going through the planning on that. We'll move these later as they start to emerge in the spring, and you guys will see that process of kind of redesigning a space that we've actually, it's nice when it's nice, but there's some part of the year it just doesn't look great. So we'll go through that when we get to that point. And, you know, again, as these perennials are going to sleep, we're making sure we have them marked either with something in the ground, marking where they are, or a drawing someplace. And, you know, this is a break in the garden for us. As much talking as yapping I've done in this video, there's not a lot that I said I was going to do. It was mostly telling you things I wasn't going to do, you know, for the month of December. And so Steph and I will go to other gardens in the area and in other areas and look and see what looks great in the wintertime, what makes a great winter garden. And so we can come back and add some of those ideas to this garden, or teach them in the videos on the channel. So thank you guys for following along with these monthly videos. We'll be back in January with another one. And again, thanks for following along.